not bad like the Barbie. I'm a doll, but I still wanna party. Pink felt like I'm ready to bend. I'm a 10, so I pull in a can. Like,
long ago roamed our female toddler ancestors, covered in the designer cloth that laid waste across the barren lands. The land lay stagnant save for the shift in the sands caused by our toddler ancestors, their teacups, kettles, and indiscriminate, fashionless, professionless baby dolls. These baby dolls could only ever be babies, therefore our ancestors could only ever be mothers. But is that all humanity can be? Where's the flair, the intrigue, the perfection encapsulated within plastic sheen? These questions vanish as our answer, the stereotypical Barbie, appears. In the pink plastered world of Barbie Land, we see our savior, stereotypical Barbie, arise with perfect hair, complexion, and an infectious desire to start her day. She greets her neighbors who awoke the same. Hi, Barbie. She greets the garbage disposal Barbies, the mail carrier Barbies, and literally everyone she makes eye contact with because her house has no walls. For the socially anxious introvert types like myself, I'm sorry if that was traumatizing. Barbie's morning routine consists of a shower that perfectly cascades her body in water droplets of hugs, a wardrobe change, hand-picked and perfectly fitting, and breakfast that practically makes itself, no dishes involved. From there, her day has the ability to unfold with the spontaneity of a child's imagination because Barbies can do anything. Barbies are everything. Barbies are Nobel Prize winners, garbage disposal women, doctors, pregnant, astronauts, and presidents, to name a few. Barbie Land is a place for women, made by women, to empower women. But no matter what, a Barbie will return to her dream house at the end of the day for the eleganza extravaganza.
Do you guys ever think about dying?
At the height of Barbie's festivities, within the shine and the shimmer, the concept of impermanence gains its magnitude as Barbie becomes overwhelmed by her ponderings of death, a concept so stigmatized within Barbie Land that it literally kills the vibe, ending off the day with the seed of change that blossoms into the main plot of this movie. The next day, Barbie arises out of sync with her neighbors, her perfect hair tarnished with a few strands out of place, and her breath silently offends her when it says, "Hi, Barbie." Her shower barrages her with droplets of ice that send a chill down her spine. Yesterday, she floated through her routine, but today, she's tossed from step to step. Today, perfection is not coming from her, but at her. It surrounds her, reminding her of the imperfections that are growing on her, like the cellulite that creeps up her thigh or the heels that fell from cloud 9. Something is wrong. Even though the Barbies that surround her are Nobel Prize winners, doctors, and scientists, their perfection merely obstructs all sense, and they have no answer for her afflictions, because the answer does not lie with those who have it, but the one who doesn't. Weird Barbie, the imperfect Barbie, who was shunned from society because her owner in the real world had a chaotic, playful spirit that dismantled the standard of perfection all Barbies must embody. Stereotypical Barbie heeds this advice and trembles to Barbie's weird house to find weird Barbie to be in complete disarray. Complexion smudged with colorful marker, hair ripped from its roots and asymmetrically placed. This Barbie was weird. But this Barbie knew the affairs that connected Barbie Land to the real world. Weird Barbie spoke of an entanglement between owner and doll, so all the imperfections that had ridden stereotypical Barbie could be fixed through fixing these issues with their owner. Stereotypical Barbie henceforth takes a trip to the real world. The real world looks a bit different from Barbie Land. The colors duller, less vibrant, less pink. The real world feels a bit different. The people are numerous but less extravagant in their style and cadence, less welcoming too. Not a single "Hi Barbie" to be heard. Barbie feels different in the real world. In Barbie Land, she struts down the street in bespoke clothing, others only admiring her for her value as a member in the pink utopia. The respect they have for one another is nothing but equal because game recognizes game. But Barbie soon realizes that the real world is simply a different kind of game. Just so we can dig deeper into the themes of this movie, let's put aside our biases to recognize the descriptions this movie is trying to make. Stereotypical Barbie explains her experience in the real world as having the undertone of hostility. Just a simple action of her walking down the street comes with stares, but the kind markedly different from Barbie Land. She feels self-conscious, demeaned, and to make matters worse, she even receives physical and verbal harassment in the first hour of her appearance in the real world. She notices that men make up the majority of authority figures or professional positions, which ultimately crumbles her perception of her purpose as a Barbie. Her existence does not have its intended effect, and she stands as a toxic model for women in the real world. You may believe this is unrealistic, and you may even believe she received this treatment because she's not adhering to the values of that society, thus she stood out like a sore thumb, but it doesn't matter though, because if you believe physical and verbal harassment is an appropriate response, then you have more problems than this movie does. I watched this movie twice. Admittedly, once I was drunk, so it was a bit of a trip, but the second time I was fine, focused, and fascinated. The pros of this movie are without a doubt Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling as actors. Not once did I ever feel like they weren't Barbie and Ken because they're everything you'd expect from a plastic dress-up doll. Margot Robbie is already the it girl, but when it came to these softer emotional moments, she cries like it's her first time experiencing the greed and hatred of humanity. Ryan Gosling is the lovable idiot that Ken is supposed to be, and I think the character development that they gave Ken was one of the most interesting aspects of the film because of how much I personally related to it. However, the flaws of this movie are skin deep, so no matter how pretty or well produced it was, there were some major flaws that ultimately made it unsatisfactory. One of the smaller issues was how rushed it felt. The movie felt disjointed due to the amount of ground they aspired to cover, but for the same reason, I congratulate them for having a less than 2-hour runtime. However, when you decide to take on themes as societally large as gender, toxic masculinity, and oppression, the amount of ads in this movie seem like a waste of precious minutes. Did we really need to halt the movie so we could freeze frame on out of production accessories for Barbie? I felt like it was a minor nuisance that may have not had a big impact on most people. On the other hand, one of the major issues of this movie is the lack of a definable audience. I think it's fair to say that this movie was geared toward women, of which age neither you nor I know. Some scenes were as childish as you'd expect from a Barbie movie, like the slapstick comedy, over-exaggerated reactions, and even wacky wordplay. But then the characters would have these epiphanies that expound on complex macro issues using academic language spoken at the speed of math professors. I may have been a dumb kid, but I don't think kids nowadays are too familiar with the terms cognitive dissonance, membrane in the abstract sense, and fascism. So maybe it could be reasoned that if Barbie Land was for the kids, then the real world was for the adults. Except the real world under Mattel was goofy in the reductive sense. Will Ferrell's character almost completely destroyed any credibility the real world was supposed to have. The chase scene out of Mattel lacked any realism. Getting stuck behind the turnstiles and throwing the badge was just painful to watch. The real world was supposed to be grounded. It was supposed to showcase how these societal issues diminish the quality of life of everyday people. When you mix the goofy into the real world, it makes their depictions of the real world seem like the real world. It's unrealistic. It's exaggerated. Some conservative types will probably think, see, harassment doesn't happen. They're creating their own fake world so that they can push their ultra-feminist talking points. And I think this movie could have avoided all that by creating a strict dichotomy between Barbie Land and the real world, and having the lightheartedness and fun that a movie like this needs coming from Barbie and Ken discovering the hidden enjoyments that get lost with mundanity. Either way, I would still recommend Barbie, but just not to the conservative types. Let's explore the character revelations and how they relate to grander themes in the real world. As this is a Barbie movie, I wanted to spend the first half focusing on Barbie, but I'm not a woman. I don't understand how Barbie felt to walk around in the real world, to feel judged, to feel self-conscious for merely being present. There will be plenty of videos online that talk about that and go to deeper depths. It just won't come from me. This video is for the boys, for the people who feel like they got that dog in them. One notable character that I briefly mentioned in this video is Ken. While it is called Barbie, Ken was a major character with the second largest on-screen appearance, and even the inciter of the patriarchy. But why did Ken seek the patriarchy? We are introduced to Ken with the narrator explicitly expressing that Ken's mood is based on the amount or type of attention he receives from Barbie. You can even see it in the first interaction Ken has with Barbie. He greeted her first, and when she responded, he felt relieved. But then when others greeted her too, he quickly realized she responds warmly to everyone. Ken is not special to Barbie. Ken wants Barbie to love him, but Barbie wants to live her life. After the big party, Ken tries to reaffirm their status as a couple, but Barbie shuts that down pretty quickly, saying, I don't want you here. This is my dream house. And instead of backing off, he plays it off because he'd rather maintain the superficial title between them than see that he has to move on. Barbie simply has different priorities in life, but he sees her treatment of him as confirmation that he's not good enough. It's a personal attack to not be wanted because Ken has this idea that he was made to be with her. An incel is an individual who is involuntarily celibate, meaning an inability to find a romantic or sexual partner despite wanting one. And the community at large believes that women are cruel, manipulative, and insensitive due to a generalization based on their own negative past experiences with women. Incels also believe physical characteristics like height and bone structure are extremely significant in their ability to acquire women. And you're probably thinking, how does Ken, aka Ryan Gosling, qualify as an incel? Well, let me explain. Ken has no identity of his own. He's insecure and bases a lot of his value on a non-reciprocal relationship. Ken's viewpoint is somewhat based on an in-universe metaphor of being a toy. So he became boxed with seemingly fixed characteristics that he is unable to change no matter what. Ken is jealous of Ken number 2 throughout the whole movie, not because Barbie gives him more attention, more so because our Ken is just the hot blondie who beaches, while Ken number 2 is the dark-haired hottie who beaches and does flips. Barbie herself said Ken number 2 is not cool, to which Ken responds, he is to me, pointing to the real issue. Despite Ken getting more attention from Barbie, Ken is afraid that any attention she gives to Ken number 2 will reveal his inadequacies by comparison. Ken reflects the incel mentality by seeing the characteristics he came boxed with as not only being unchangeable, but overwhelming obstacles in his ability to win her affection. Ken clings to the idea of Barbie and Ken because it seems easier to be externally validated than wrenching out your soul, digging into your heart, and still being left without answers for who you are or if you're good enough. Ultimately, Ken's insecurities obstruct any chances he could have at creating meaningful relationships with Barbie. So in the first half of the movie, Ken is both failing at his predestined purpose and is an unworthy Ken in his own eyes. The Red Pill movement is a men's rights movement that operates off the principles established in the Matrix. The Red Pill is in contrast to the Blue Pill. The Red Pill stands as the life-changing truth that allows men to see how oppressive society is to them, while the Blue Pill is the facade reality that a movie like Barbie portrays, that women are oppressed instead. The Red Pill movement believes that women can do whatever they want based on their looks, while men are judged the more serious criteria like wealth, status, influence, and their profession. Men, in this way, have a much more difficult time earning respect in this world because they can't use their looks like women do. The Red Pill movement, however, prescribes that their followers become high-value men who possess a lot of wealth, material possessions, and even women. Women are treated as a commodity because they offer nothing but their looks. I know it's tough to think of our lovable Ken succumbing to these beliefs, but you have to understand the underlying reasons why something like this can be appealing. Before even getting to the real world, we have to discuss a systemic issue within Barbie Land. Kens are second-class citizens with no representation in the judicial system, no dream houses, and no real agency within the pink utopia. If our Ken is only happy when he's noticed by Barbie, then it seems reasonable to assume that all other Kens have their own Barbie who they hope to appease. Think about this. Our Ken is currently triple stacked with insecurity, unreciprocated feelings, and systemic oppression. Therefore, when he gets to the real world, where all things are inverted, we can understand why he gravitated toward a system that puts men above all else, the patriarchy. His first impression of the real world was completely opposed to Barbie's. While she felt restricted and self-conscious, he felt seen, respected, and admired. Ken was so starved for appreciation that he mistook a woman bystander asking him for the time as a sign of praise, like she came to him because he was someone who would know better. Furthermore, while he was exploring, he came across Century City, where he saw people like himself literally on a pedestal, deified for their male achievements. He saw a businessman with the confidence and authority to dismiss a woman, a foreign concept in Barbie Land. And he even tried to replicate those actions in hope of reclaiming his power. He looked at all of these examples and saw how power came from wealth, status, influence, profession, creed, and horses. As his profession in Barbie Land is beach, he didn't have any skills that transferred over into the real world, so he couldn't replicate the status he witnessed firsthand. It should be mentioned, though, that Ken doesn't care about being a CEO, doctor, or whatever else. In his mind, these positions and the steps needed to obtain them are superfluous technicalities. These were just positions that brought authority, so instead of taking time to make something of himself in the real world, he decided to take the easy shortcut. Ken went back to Barbie Land and leveraged all the real world information to seize respect from Barbies and Kens. When Ken came back to Barbie Land, he didn't go around telling people about red pandas, minivans, or movies. He exclusively propagated patriarchy, glorified material possession, and advocated for the subservience of Barbies. Ken is constantly grasping for a sense of identity, but because he's unwilling to put into work to value all his own idiosyncrasies, he keeps trying to externally shape a facade that betrays his true feelings. The best example would be the first altercation between Ken and Barbie when Barbie returns to Barbie Land with Gloria and Sasha. In the height of Kendom's patriarchy, with horse paraphernalia, big-ass trucks, Mojo Dojo Casa houses, and Barbie serving the Kens brewski beers, Ken, adorned in the freshest mink coat, with the unrelenting respect of his peers, still tried to woo stereotypical Barbie, but under the protective cover of long-term, long-distance, low-commitment casual girlfriend. This time, certainly, she'd accept because Ken's exterior facade is perfectly crafted to give the impression that he's better than all other Kens. Except Barbie rejects him again, causing him to devolve and unfurl all the ways he overcompensated to insulate himself from the hurt he felt from Barbie's rejection of him. "You failed me." He even goes so far as to hurt Barbie as she once did to him, but with the malicious intent Barbie never once showed him. He kicks her out of her own dream house, and in a moment that mirrors how he felt to be rejected that girls' night, he dons glasses not to look cool, but to hide the tears he feels having to do unto others what he wished not been done to him. The hurt is so intense that he even puts on a second set of shades because now he's just in preservation mode to maintain the facade he created, the facade that grants him recognition from everyone else in Barbie Land, even if they don't mean as much as Barbie does to him. Ken is a prime example of how young men become radicalized to hurt others. In avoidance of confronting his own insecurities, Ken made it a central pillar in his life to gain the affection of Barbie. He was willing to change himself entirely to be what he thought Barbie wanted, not knowing that Barbie was desperately figuring out how she could overcome her own insecurities. Nevertheless, Ken's fixation demonized Barbie's ambiguous communication as a personal attack. He took the incel's approach of attributing all fault to his personal characteristics rather than recognizing that sometimes the people you're interested in could have completely personal reasons for why they don't want to be in a relationship. Consequently, if you couldn't have the external validation of the romantic partner that he wanted, then a system like the Red Pill movement is a comforting solution. He saw firsthand how wealth, status, influence, etc. came with respect, the kind of respect he wouldn't need to gain for himself. He went as far as bringing over patriarchy to Barbie Land because by subjugating women to a lower class, there will always be someone to bolster the egos of men. These movements in the real world work because they come with a community who has gone through similar or worse experiences than themselves. A lot of these people in these communities may not have friends or the social skills to successfully traverse the complicated terrain of creating meaningful relationships. So when you meet someone with the exact same experience as yourself, it simplifies the complicated process. They bond through grief. Besides the communal aspect, we live in a capitalistic society that prides itself on the commodity. Often, people see rich people with nice cars, fancy houses, and a horde of women and see them as models for success. The system shapes consumer behavior, and to see the successful few conspicuously consume the goods you lack naturally causes you to pursue a similar mindset to satisfy your own needs. We all want to be happy, but for some reason, we're more likely to follow a prescribed set of steps towards someone else's happiness then try to figure out our own. This is going to be a short, rather unthoughtful section, but I think the character of Alan is the movie's representation of positive masculinity. In many ways, I think I relate to Alan. He just seems like the type of person who was raised by women. I was raised by women. A single parent mother, grandma, auntie, and older sister. The way my family turned out, we just had a matriarchal system. And throughout my life, I saw how my mother could do anything she wanted, which is in stark contrast to the Red Pill movement. My mother is beautiful, but she knew looks weren't going to provide for my sister and I. My mother worked male-dominated fields, she did construction, warehouse work, and even became a pipe fitter for my city's water system. Till this day, she's still working in a male-dominated field, but rose through the ranks, so she's a supervisor handling million-dollar projects. She supplements her income with a small landscaping business where she regularly gets dirty installing irrigation systems for people's lawns. I see firsthand on a daily basis how capable a woman is. Moreover, technically, I'm an incel because I'm a socially stunted guy who struggles to establish new connections. I've had an ex egg my car, hire an online stripper to bully my Instagram posts, and in another situation, I've even just had my heart broken because she said I was too feminine. I don't hate women because I know these are just small outlier moments when I met people incompatible with the things that make me great. I developed this confidence in myself from a good support system of women, personal challenges like gymming, pursuits of my passions, and just a lot of reflections on who I am. It took a long time, and sometimes I put in the work without ever finding the answer. And that's okay too. With something as serious as valuing yourself, you can take all the time you need. There's no shortcut that someone can sell to you, but I strongly advocate you take the time to slowly push past the discomfort that you feel. Big changes come from hundreds of tiny steps, and they all matter. But you'll always be enough. That's why you want change in the first place. Alright, and Alan is a badass. Alan doesn't need to stand out. Alan is surprisingly in tune with the combative capabilities of his body. Alan is going against his creed when his values differ from theirs. And my favorite mini moment from this movie is a 1-second clip where Alan starts crying when Ken loses his composure in the finale. Alan really cares about his friends. Alan has the emotional capacity to empathize with someone he deeply cares for. We all need to be a bit more like Alan. This was an unnecessarily deep dive into Barbie, and I really appreciate you giving your time to listen to this incel speak. I really appreciate it. Thank you. You'll always be enough. Till next time.
And I'm bad like the Barbie. I'm a doll, but I still wanna party. Pink felt like I'm ready to bend. I'm a 10, so I pull in a can.